Hello, my name is Crescent Jicol, and today I'll be presenting our paper titled Designing and Assessing a Virtual Reality Simulation to Build Resilience to Street Harassment. Street harassment is generally defined as unwanted sexual attention, harassment, or objectification by a stranger in a public space, such as streets, parks, or public transportation. It is unfortunately a globally prevalent issue that affects many people, with 90% of women in the UK having experienced street harassment even before the age of 17. The fear, anger, and frustration generated by its prevalence affects many people's everyday lives and constrains their freedom to safely enjoy public spaces. A study including a group of women showed that when discussing their harassment experiences, the most common theme mentioned was the fear of physical aggression and intrusion of privacy. Street harassment also has wider psychological impacts such as losing sense of control and reduced self-esteem. It has been linked to generalized anxiety wherein individuals feel unable to relax and fear the worst happening while in an isolated public setting. Stress inoculation training is used to prepare individuals for stressful situations and diminish the potential for a negative psychological reaction such as PTSD. Especially, it helps individuals build stress tolerance by preventing panic or fight or flight responses for exposure. Immersive VR can be used to enhance the effects of stress inoculation training because it provides the user with a sense of presence, and it is able to evoke reactions and emotions similar to real-life experience. By exposing users to stressful stimuli in VR-enhanced training, they can adapt and perform efficiently and at ease. And there already exists a handful of commercial roleplay-based VR training tools for sexual harassment. However, these tools often focus on training the user in the role of bystander rather than the victim. Therefore, our study utilizes a mixed method approach to investigate three research questions. The first is, how can we design a realistic simulation of street harassment? Second, what are the ethical issues surrounding simulations of street harassment? And third, how effective is a simulation of street harassment in eliciting realistic emotions? To answer these research questions, we have conducted three studies. Study 1 consisted of a user study which informed characteristics of the virtual environment design. It addressed the first research question by providing evidence to help designers overcome the fundamental source of invalidity in vivo roleplays, which is that people often do not respond in a natural fashion due to the failure of the interaction to feel vivid and realistic. Next, Study 2 consisted of interviews of experts in the field, such as charity work with victims of street harassment, trainers for bystander intervention, and the co-founder of a self-defense center. The interview data was analyzed via thematic analysis, and results showed that the created experience was realistic in reproducing a street harassment scenario. The experts considered that the experience was safe to administer if appropriate screening was undertaken. They also suggested that the experience could make training more practical and real compared to current methods. For Study 3, we used a within-participants design to investigate the effectiveness of the created street harassment simulation. Affording users agency in VR has been shown to increase the intensity of elicited emotions. Accordingly, we have investigated this possibility by considering two VR conditions. The passive condition, where participants experience the simulation in VR without interacting, and the active condition, where participants experience the simulation still in VR, but can interact by verbally responding to the harasser, or put their hands out in front of them when the harasser gets too close. In the screen condition, participants viewed the simulation on a conventional 2D screen. While we have measured numerous factors, I'll be discussing only the most relevant: emotional response to the simulation and whether participants found the simulation useful or effective. Based on previous work, we have posed a priori hypothesis that our harassment simulations would become more effective with increasing immersiveness and realism, so each variable would increase significantly from the screen condition to passive VR, and then further when affording users agency in active VR. Emotional response was measured using the negative effect subscale of the well-validated and widely used PANAS and also STI, and the pressure tension subscale of the IMI. To measure for psychological preparation, we tested the participants' empathy for harassment victims and the value usefulness subscale of the IMI. In accordance with the indications of interviewed experts and requirements of the university ethics officer, we administered a trauma screening questionnaire, and only participants who passed the questionnaire were allowed to proceed to the next stage. The screening process was to ensure the safety of participants, as the simulation may trigger negative emotions or trauma. Participants who passed the screening process completed a demographics questionnaire and baseline measures for empathy, PANAS, and STI. In the VR conditions, they were fitted with the VR headset and were given time to adjust for comfort before the scenario started. In the active VR condition, participants were encouraged to look at their hands to familiarize themselves with the tracking at the start of the experience. They were told that they would use their voice and hands to influence the situation if they wished. For this study, we recruited 44 participants, out of which 24 were males and 20 females. And this is a short clip showing part of the active VR condition. The virtual environment depicted a bus stop at night, and the user was approached by a man who repeatedly asked them out and made inappropriate remarks. In this condition, the user could respond by putting their hands in front of them, in which case the harasser took a step back, or by speaking up, which had the same effect. For emotions, ANOVA results showed that both VR conditions were significantly better at inducing realistic emotions than the screen condition, but active VR was not significantly greater than passive VR. This suggests that affording users the types of agency that we implemented does not significantly impact relevant felt emotions. Similarly, for the IMI value usefulness skill and for empathy, both passive and active VR was significantly greater than screen for the value usefulness skill, but active VR was not significantly greater than passive. For empathy, passive VR was significantly greater than screen, but no significant difference was found between the screen and active VR conditions or between passive and active VR. Gender differences were only found for empathy. For our studies, we were able to successfully demonstrate the superiority of using an immersive simulation over a 2D screen and eliciting realistic emotional responses, and address potential ethical issues surrounding the simulations of street harassment. According to stress inoculation training, the effectiveness of eliciting realistic emotion is likely to translate into increased resilience and ability to cope. Although not yet validated for stress inoculation training, measures of intrinsic motivation such as usefulness, value, and participants' comments indicating the general increasing feeling of the sense of empowerment and preparedness suggest that the simulation may lead to increased performance and positive psychological and behavioral developments. The significantly higher empathy reported by females in all conditions and higher scores in the IMI pressure tension scale may be linked to the fact that a majority of harassment victims are women. However, the lack of gender effects in other measures imply that the simulation can be used more widely. To conclude, the 3 studies that were conducted answered our 3 research questions. This could help VR designers and other stakeholders to realize the potential of immersive technology in combating street harassment. First, we have demonstrated that an ecologically valid simulation can effectively immerse users and elicit realistic emotional responses. Second, the ethical risks associated with simulating harassment in VR that should be addressed in the design have been identified. Third, we have evidenced the multi-purpose use of VR in both increasing psychological preparedness and enhancing awareness and empathy in potential harassers. Thank you for listening, and I will welcome any questions.